I didn't change from inspiration, I changed from exhaustion. Chapter 11. The Breaking Point. Denver sits a mile above sea level, and you can feel it the moment you step outside. The air is thinner. Breathing takes effort. Every step feels like a small climb. From this hotel window, the Rocky Mountains stretch across the horizon, massive, unmoving, ancient. They make everything else feel small. Your problems, your excuses, your running. It's the right place to talk about the moment I hit the wall. Because the breaking point isn't dramatic. It's not cinematic. It's not a single moment where everything explodes. It's quieter than that. Slower, more honest. It's the moment where the thing that used to numb you stops working. 6 years had passed since the marriage ended. 6 years since the mentor spoke truth I wasn't ready to hear. 6 years of running into screens, into fantasies, to anything that kept me from feeling the weight of my own life. And then one day, I couldn't run anymore. Denver's altitude mirrors that feeling. You breathe the same way you always have, but suddenly it's not enough. Your chest tightens, your body protests, your mind slows down. You feel the limits you've been ignoring. That's what happened to me. Not physically, emotionally. The escape stopped working. The thing that used to numb me didn't numb me anymore. The habits that used to distract me felt empty. The routines that used to comfort me felt hollow. The private world I had built, the world that had protected me for decades, suddenly felt too small to breathe in. I remember the moment clearly. Not the date, not the time, just the sensation. A heaviness in my chest, a buzzing under my skin, a kind of emotional altitude sickness, like I had climbed too high, too fast, and my body finally realized it couldn't keep up. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I wasn't scared. I was tired, bone deep tired. The kind of tired that doesn't go away with sleep. Exhaustion has a way of stripping away your defenses. It makes you honest. Not because you want to be, but because you don't have the energy to lie anymore. I had spent years pretending I could manage this alone. Years convincing myself I was in control. Years telling myself I didn't need help. But exhaustion doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care about your pride. It doesn't care about your image. It doesn't care about the stories you tell yourself. It just sits there, heavy and undeniable. Denver's mountains outside this window look like truth, solid, immovable, impossible to ignore. That's what the breaking point felt like, a truth I could no longer outrun. I remember sitting alone in a room not unlike this one, staring at a blank wall, feeling the weight of everything I had avoided, not in a dramatic way, not in a crisis way, real. I realized I couldn't keep living the way I had been, not because I wanted to change, not because I was inspired, not because I had some sudden revelation, but because I was too tired to keep lying to myself. There's a strange clarity in exhaustion. When you can't run, you finally see what you've been running from. When you can't hide, you finally see what you've been hiding. When you can't numb, you finally feel what's underneath. And underneath was a man who needed help, a man who needed honesty, a man who needed to stop pretending he could do this alone. Denver's thin air forces you to slow down, to breathe intentionally, to pay attention to your body, to acknowledge your limits. That's what the breaking point did for me. It forced me to slow down, to breathe, to acknowledge the truth I had avoided for decades. I didn't change overnight. I didn't suddenly become healthy or whole or wise. I didn't fix everything in a moment. But I did something I had never done before. I stayed. I didn't run. I didn't escape. I didn't disappear into the private world. that had always been my refuge. I stayed in the discomfort. I stayed in the truth. I stayed in the moment where everything felt heavy and real and unavoidable. And staying, not running, was the first step toward healing. This chapter isn't about triumph. It's about surrender. It's about the moment where exhaustion becomes honesty, where honesty becomes clarity, where clarity becomes the beginning of something new. Standing here in Denver, looking at the mountains that have stood for millions of years, I can feel the echo of that moment. The moment where I finally stopped running long enough to see myself clearly. I hit the wall and stayed, and what came next is what staying really looks like. A different room, a different window, a different city each month.